The words hit me like a physical blow, a plea delivered on the open sidewalk for the entire world to see. Marry me, please. Kneeling before me was Caleb Hale, the man who was supposed to be my husband, clutching a bouquet of yellow roses so large it was comical, and standing between us, his body a rigid wall of fury, was his younger brother, Owen, the man I had actually married. Owen Eurostrade's voice was a low growl, laced with a possessiveness that was as new as it was unnerving. You've got to be kidding me. Proposing to my husband, that's a new low, even for you. Caleb, my once fiancé tilder copyright, looked from his furious brother to me, his expression a chaotic mess of confusion and wounded pride. Husband, what the hell are you talking about, Owen? I thought you were just doing me a favor, covering for me. A bitter laugh almost escaped my lips. A favor, covering. Farter Eurostrade's what my entire life had become in the span of a few hours. But to understand how I ended up as the unwilling prize in a tug-of-war between the two most powerful alpha brothers in the Alliance, we have to go back to the beginning. Back to the day my perfectly orchestrated future shattered into a million pieces. I remember sitting in the oppressive silence of the bridal suite, the air thick with the scent of lilies and broken promises. My reflection stared back at me from the ornate vanity mirror, a stranger in a crisp white suit tailored to accentuate a body I suddenly felt disconnected from. The fabric, so expensive and pristine, felt like a shroud. This was supposed to be the first day of my forever. My wedding day to Caleb Hale. On paper, he was perfection. The eldest son and heir to the Hale fortune, an S-class alpha whose pheromones were a near-flawless 99% match for my own S-class Omega designation. The Alliance, in its infinite, data-driven wisdom, had declared our union a genetic jackpot, a surefire path to marital harmony and biologically superior children. A fairy tale written in lab reports. The only problem was Prince Charming had apparently read a different script. He had vanished, leaving me to face the music alone, and that music was currently a full-blown tantrum raging just outside my door. The voice that assaulted the heavy oak was a symphony of adolescent outrage, a raw, indignant howl that belonged more in a high school hallway than outside a bridal suite. I'm not marrying some guy my brother ditched. It was Owen, Caleb Eurostrade's younger brother. His voice, a potent cocktail of indignation and wounded pride, was loud enough to make the crystal chandelier tremble. What am I? The family's spare part. The backup plan? This is humiliating. I raised a single, perfectly sculpted eyebrow at my reflection. Charming. So, the Hale family are Eurostrade's second son, another coveted S-class alpha, was less than thrilled about inheriting his brother's abandoned Omega. I couldn't entirely fault him for his sentiment. In our society, where pheromones were the invisible strings that puppeted our lives, dictating everything from our careers to our legally binding marriage contracts, being shackled to someone based on a compatibility score felt like a particularly cruel cosmic joke. Yet, despite the logic, hearing myself dismissed as some guy stung, it was a sharp, unexpected jab to an ego I hadn't even realized was so fragile. The deep, gravelly voice of their father, Victor Hale, cut through Ona Eurostrade's tirade. It was the voice of a retired general, a man accustomed to having his orders followed without question. Owen, just do me the courtesy of looking at him first. Riley is the most sought-after Omega in the entire Alliance. You think our Eurostrade let a jewel like that slip through our family Eurostrade's fingers just because your brother is an idiot? A jewel, the best catch. The words were meant to be a compliment, but they landed like insults, reducing me to a commodity, a rare specimen to be acquired. Ona Eurostrade's scoff was pure, unadulterated contempt. I don't care if he's the goddamn Mona Lisa hanging in the Louvre. Eurostrade am not her face chaser, Dad. This isn't a Eurostrade tea about looks, it's about principle. I'm not cleaning up Khaled's catastrophic mess. A small, reluctant smile touched my lips. I found myself oddly impressed by his conviction, even if it was delivered with all the grace and subtlety of a wrecking ball. My decision was made in that instant. I wouldn't stay where I wasn't wanted. I wouldn't beg. The Alliance granted a 1-month trial period for arranged matches, a cooling-off window to see if the data translated into reality. If Owen was this vehemently opposed, I would simply walk. No drama, no tears. I had other prospects. A line of alphas with 80% compatibility scores who would consider a union with me the pinnacle of their existence. But they weren't Caleb. It was Caleb I had wanted, with his shy, thoughtful messages and the easy camaraderie of our late-night gaming sessions. At least, it was Caleb I had wanted until he Eurostrade unceremoniously ghosted me for some fleeting online infatuation, leaving me stranded in this 5-star circus of humiliation. Principles. Victor's voice was now dripping with a thick, corrosive sarcasm. You want to lecture me about principles, while Eurostrade am scrambling to salvage this family's reputation from the gutter your brother threw it into. Riley is a work of art, and his pheromone profile is beyond exceptional. Do you have any idea the strings I had to pull to secure this match? Owen's voice escalated, vibrating with a desperate, defiant fury. I don't give a damn about your strings. Send him back to wherever he came from. I am not marrying someone just because Caleb got cold feet. A sudden scuffle, a sharp thud, followed by a yelp of pain. Victor, it seemed, was not above a bit of physical persuasion. Then, the calm, firm voice of their mother, Grace, intervened. Victor, thutter Eurostrade's enough. Owen, darling, no one is forcing you into anything, but for heaven's sake, would it kill you to at least meet Riley before you declare war on the entire world? That was my cue. I rose from the vanity, smoothing the front of my pristine white jacket. I had heard enough. I didn't need a front row seat to Owen Hale's dramatic monologue about how I was his brotherly Eurostrade's unwanted leftovers. I retrieved my phone from the dressing table, my thumb already hovering over the Alliance liaison Eurostrade's contact information, ready to initiate the cancellation protocols and extricate myself from this disaster. But then, Ona Eurostrade's voice sliced through the air again, a final, desperate proclamation. He's not my husband. He's Khaled's problem. If you don't agree, I'll join a monastery. I'll quit IT. I'll do anything. I opened the door. The chaotic scene in the hallway froze, as if a director had yelled cut. Victor had Owen pinned against the wall by his collar, his face a mask of thunderous rage. Grace hovered nearby, her expression a perfect portrait of maternal exasperation. And Ona Eurostrade's eyes, a stunning shade of hazel framed by impossibly long lashes that could grace the cover of any high-fashion magazine, locked onto mine. His jaw, which had been set in a line of stubborn defiance, went slack. For a long, suspended moment, the only sound was the frantic thumping of my own heart. I could practically see the gears in his brain grinding to a screeching halt, smoke pouring from his ears. He managed to choke out, his voice cracking with an adolescent squeak that completely betrayed his alpha status. His cheeks, which had been pale with anger, were now flooded with a deep, charming shade of crimson that clashed beautifully with his dark, tousled hair. He turned his wide, stunned eyes to his father. Darter Euros is that him? Victor released his son's collar, a slow, triumphant smirk spreading across his face. He looked like a man who had just won the state lottery. Told you, son. Riley's a knockout. I tilted my head, my initial anger giving way to a flicker of amusement. I gave Owen a slow, deliberate once-over. He was tall, with the broad shoulders of an athlete, and a face so classically handsome it was almost unfair. And then his scent hit me. It wasn't the aggressive, musky scent of a typical S-Class alpha. It was a warm, sweet, disarming wave of caramel and milk candy. It was utterly unexpected and strangely, achingly familiar. He was staring at me, not like a prize or a problem, but like a complex equation he was desperate to solve. I was just on my way out, I said, my voice deliberately light and unbothered. It sounds like you have some rather strong opinions on this arrangement, Owen. I'm not in the business of forcing anyone into anything. Owen blinked, as if snapping out of a trance. No, wait. He cleared his throat, suddenly standing ramrod straight, his entire demeanor shifting from rebellious teen to a formal, flustered suitor reciting lines from a terribly written romantic comedy. I mean Euros apparent's wish is my command. You know Euros family duty. Ander Euros and Ire Euros trade am totally cool with marrying you. Extremely willing, in fact. It was my choice, obviously. Victor let out a derisive snort, rolling his eyes dramatically. Oh, now you're willing. 5 seconds ago, you were threatening to renounce civilization and join a silent order of monks. Dad, Owen hissed, the blush on his cheeks deepening to a shade of scarlet. He shot a sheepish, mortified glance in my direction, and I could have sworn the tips of his ears were glowing. I'm just saying Euros, I'm not opposed to it. One must respect the Alliance's rules, right? Grace stepped forward, her smile a mixture of warmth and caution. Riley, why don't we all go inside and have a proper talk? This has been a rather overwhelming day for everyone. I hesitated. Owen's whiplash-inducing change of heart was almost comical, but there was something in his frantic, hopeful Euros, something surprisingly genuine Euros that gave me pause. I thought of Caleb, who hadn't even had the basic decency to send a text message before shattering our plans. At least Owen was here, present and accounted for, even if he was a walking, talking, blushing catastrophe. Fine, I said, crossing my arms over my chest. But let's establish one thing very clearly. I am not begging to be a part of this family. The Alliance gives us 1 month. 1 month to figure this out. If you're not completely 100% in, Owen, then I'm out. No offense, but I don't do half-assed. Owen nodded so vigorously I was afraid he might give himself a concussion. Totally. I'm in. All in. 100%. Absolutely. He paused, then muttered under his breath, so low I almost missed it. Not that I'm desperate or anything. Victor clapped his hands together, his good humor restored. That's the spirit. Now, let's get this wedding back on track. Riley, you look like you could use a strong drink. Owen, stop gawking and go help your mother with the guests. As Grace gently ushered me towards the reception hall, I caught Owen stealing one last, lingering glance at me over his shoulder. His pheromone scent, sweet and endlessly distracting, hung in the air, and I couldn't help but wonder if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life, or if I had inadvertently stumbled into something far more interesting than I could have ever imagined. Kids got it bad already, Victor murmured as he passed me, his voice low with amusement. Give him a chance, Riley. He's a monumental pain in the ass, but his heart's in the right place. I didn't reply, but as I stepped into the glittering chaos of my salvaged wedding reception, I couldn't shake the feeling that Owen Hale was going to be infinitely more than I had bargained for. 1 month, I reminded myself. I have 1 month to decide if this reluctant, flustered groom is worth the trouble or if I'm better off walking away for good. The reception hall was a dizzying kaleidoscope of champagne flutes, polite applause, and smiles stretched so tight they looked painful. I, however, had taken refuge in the cavernous honeymoon suite, trying to decompress from the sheer chaos of the day. Caliber Eurostrade S unceremonious flight on a Eurostrade S breathtakingly dramatic reversal, and the crushing weight of a marriage I had never chosen. Euros. It was enough to make a lesser man curl up under the 1,000-thread count sheets and not emerge for a week. Instead, I found myself perched on the edge of the ridiculously large king-sized bed, watching Owen Hale fidget by the door like a schoolboy caught cheating on a test. One of his hands was clamped around my wrist, his grip surprisingly firm, as if he genuinely feared I might make a run for it. His milk candy pheromone scent saturated the air in the suite, a sweetness so potent it was almost cloying. You can let go now, I said, arching an eyebrow. I'm not planning a prison break. Ona Eurostrade's hazel eyes widened in alarm, and he dropped my hand as if it had burst into flames. Right. Sorry. He cleared his throat, jamming his hands deep into his pockets as if to keep them from committing any further offenses. But his gaze was a nervous hummingbird, darting towards me, then away, then back again. His cheeks were perpetually pink, and I was beginning to suspect that blushing was his default state of being whenever I was in the vicinity. The silence in the room stretched, growing heavier and more awkward with each passing second. I leaned back, supporting myself on my hands, and studied him openly. There was no denying it, Owen was breathtakingly beautiful. The kind of beautiful that stops traffic and starts wars. Those expressive hazel eyes, the impossibly thick lashes, a jawline so sharp it looked like it could slice diamonds. But it was his scent, that warm, sugary note of milk and caramel, that was truly throwing me for a loop. It was familiar. It tugged at a thread of memory I couldn't quite grasp, something from the countless late nights spent with Khaled in the virtual world of Alliance Odyssey. Sometimes, his digital avatar would grow quiet, his usual confidence replaced by a sudden awkwardness, and I would catch a faint whiff of something sweet through the Alliance's advanced sensory feedback technology. A scent just like this. So, I said, deciding to shatter the tension before it suffocated us both. You're really alright with this? Marrying a complete stranger just because your father ordered you to? Owen stiffened, his shoulders squaring as if preparing for an attack. He attempted a shrug, aiming for nonchalance and missing the mark by a spectacular margin. It's not about what Dad wants. I mean, it is, Euros. Look, I'm just trying to do the right thing here. Family honor, alliance regulations, all that stuff. He paused, risking another quick, furtive glance at me. Besides, Euros not exactly terrible to look at. A snort of laughter escaped me before I could stop it. High praise. Should I swoon now? Or should I wait until after dinner? The tips of his ears turned a fiery red, and he glared at the plush carpet as if it had personally insulted his entire lineage. You know what I mean. I'm not shallow, okay? I'm just Euros stating an objective fact. Euros fine. Better than fine. Whatever. He was floundering, and it was, against all odds, kind of adorable. Like watching a Great Dane puppy get tangled in its own feet. I tilted my head, a slow, predatory smile spreading across my face. There was something about his flustered, earnest energy that made me want to poke and prod, just to see how deep that blush could actually go. Are you sure you're not just a little bit bitter about having to pick up Caleb's sloppy seconds? You were making quite a racket earlier about not wanting me. Owen's head snapped up, pure panic flashing in his eyes. That's no €2, I didn't mean it like that. I was angry at Caleb, not at you. He's the one who bailed on his responsibilities, and I got stuck with €3. I mean, I chose to step up. He ran a hand through his dark hair, mussing it in a way that was unfairly attractive. Can we just €2 pretend I never said any of that stuff? I didn't answer immediately, preferring to let him squirm for a moment longer. My mind was stuck on that milk candy scent, a wild suspicion beginning to bloom in my chest, a suspicion that tied Owen directly to those quiet, intimate nights in the virtual world. Sometimes caliber Trade's avatar would behave so differently, shy, clumsy, with an underlying sweetness that felt completely out of character. I Trade tease him, leaning my own avatar in close in the game's hyper-realistic VR space. And he Trade stammer and blush, his digital face glowing red, and always, there was that scent. Faint, but unmistakable. Tell me something, I said, my voice deliberately casual. Do you ever play Alliance Odyssey? You know, that VR game where you can sync your pheromones. Owen went completely still, his expression a perfect fusion of guilt and the terrified paralysis of a deer caught in headlights. Maybe. I mean, who hasn't? It's pretty popular. He was a spectacularly bad liar. His voice pitched up half an octave, like a choirboy confessing his sins. Really? I leaned forward, closing the space between us on the bed. His sweet scent spiked, thick with nerves, because I used to play with Caleb all the time, and sometimes he'd get all shy and awkward, like he had no idea what to do with me. A lot like you're acting right now, actually. Ona Trade's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish gasping for air. That's a coincidence. A total coincidence. I don't even know your username in the game. He started to shuffle backwards, trying to put distance between us, but his back was already against the wall. I stood up, taking another step closer. His eyes darted to my lips for a fraction of a second before he caught himself. Funny thing is, I said, lowering my voice to a conspiratorial murmur, whenever Caleb got like that, I'd smell something sweet. A lot like milk candy. Does that sound at all familiar to you? He was practically vibrating with panic now, his face a shade of crimson that should have come with a government-issued label. Nope, no idea what you're talking about. It was probably a server lag. Or are Euros a glitch? Yeah, a sensory glitch. I was about to press him further, to pin him down with the truth, when a sharp knock echoed from the suite door. Victor's booming voice followed. Owen, stop hiding in there and come help with the guests. Riley, you too. Don't let my idiot son keep you locked up all night. Owen lunged for the door as if it were a life raft in a stormy sea, but I was faster. I grabbed his arm, pulling him back. We're not finished talking about this, I murmured, my lips so close to his ear I could feel the heat radiating from his skin. If you're keeping secrets from me, Owen, I will find them out. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. No secrets, he mumbled, but his eyes screamed a different story. I'm an open book. completely transparent. Scout's honor. I released him, a smirk playing on my lips as he practically tripped over his own feet in his haste to escape. Sure you are. Back at the reception, I staked out a position on the sidelines, nursing a glass of sparkling water while Owen was reluctantly roped into a series of toasts by his mother. Every few minutes, his gaze would find mine across the crowded room, as if he were checking to make sure I hadn't vanished into thin air. It was almost sweet, if I could momentarily forget the fact that he was almost certainly hiding something significant from me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced down to see an old message from Caleb, time-stamped from weeks ago, full of vague apologies for being distant. I deleted it without a second thought, a familiar tightness clenching in my chest. Caleb was a ghost. Owen, with his milk candy scent and his mountain of secrets, was real. And maybe, I considered, he wasn't the only one with something to hide. Riley. Owen, a Eurostrayed's voice broke through my reverie. He was weaving his way through the crowd, a lopsided, slightly tipsy grin on his face. You have to save me. My Aunt Clara is trying to make me dance the tango, and I have the coordination of a newborn giraffe. I arched an eyebrow. And I'm supposed to be your knight in shining armor. Exactly. He grabbed my hand, his touch sending a surprising jolt of warmth through me, and started pulling me towards the dance floor. That damn scent wrapped around me again, sweet and intoxicating. Come on, just one dance. For appearances. Alliance rules, remember. I rolled my eyes but allowed him to lead me into the fray. As we swayed awkwardly to some generic, forgettable slow song, I caught his gaze. For a moment, the loud-mouthed, flustered boy from earlier was gone. In his place was just Owen, nervous and incredibly earnest, with a smile that was beginning to methodically chip away at the walls I had built around my heart. Stop staring, I muttered, but the words had no bite. Can't help it, he said, his voice soft and low, just for me. You're kind of stealing the show. A real laugh escaped me then, and I shook my head. 1 month, I reminded myself again. 1 month to figure out if Owen Hale was worth all this trouble, or if that sweet milk candy scent was just masking a truth I wasn't prepared to face. The moment I stepped back onto the grounds of the Alliance Academy, I was walking through a sea of whispers and sideways glances. It had been 3 days since the wedding fiasco, and the campus rumor mill was operating at maximum capacity. The prevailing narrative painted me as the tragic Omega dumped at the altar by the golden boy Caleb Hale, reluctantly accepted by his hot-headed brother Owen, and now clinging desperately to a sham marriage doomed to implode. I held my head high, my expression a carefully constructed mask of indifference, and ignored the snickers and pointed stares as I made my way to my first class. Being the center of attention was nothing new. Euros class Omegas were a rarity after alla Euros, but this was different. This wasn't envy or admiration. This was pity, and I despised it. The classroom was already buzzing with gossip when I entered. Evan, an A-class Omega who seemed to have made it his life's mission to resent my existence, was holding court in the center of the room. He sported a fresh bruise on his cheek from some unrelated scuffle, but the smug, predatory grin on his face told me he was more than ready to make my morning a living hell. Well, look what the cat dragged in, he drawled, his voice loud enough to carry to every corner of the room. It's Riley, still trying to pretend he's hot stuff after the Hale family kicked him to the curb. I slid into my usual seat, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Good to see you too, Evan. Still bitter that I consistently get better grades than you without even trying. A few stifled giggles rippled through the classroom, but Evan was undeterred. He leaned forward, his eyes glinting with a special kind of malice. Your precious braids won't help you now. The word on the street is that Caleb ran off with some online fantasy girl, and Owen only agreed to marry you out of pity. How does it feel to be the Alliance's biggest joke? I clenched my jaw, my fingers tightening around the edge of my tablet until my knuckles were white. He wasn't entirely wrong about Caleb, and the truth of it stung more than I would ever admit. But euros, I thought of his sweet milk candy scent, his flustered, heartfelt apologies, and the surprisingly firm way he had held my hand on the dance floor. Pity was not the word I would have chosen. Keep talking, I said, my voice dangerously low. You're doing a fantastic job of embarrassing yourself. Evan's face turned a blotchy red, but he doubled down, emboldened by the silent audience. Embarrassing? You're the one who got publicly stood up at your own wedding. I bet Owen already regrets it. You think you're so special just because you're S-class. You're nothing but damaged goods. Enough. I stood so abruptly that my chair scraped loudly against the floor. The room fell silent, every single eye now fixed on us. I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over the record button. Say that again, Evan. I'm sure the Omega Protection Agency would be very interested to hear your opinions on slander. He faltered for a second, a flicker of fear in his eyes, but his ego was too massive to allow him to back down. Slander? It's the truth. Everyone knows the Hales don't want you. Nobody does. I hit record, letting his venomous words fill the silence. The other students shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some whispering to their neighbors, others studiously avoiding my gaze. I was about to deliver a verbal finishing blow when the classroom door swung open, and our professor, a perpetually frowning beater, strode in. Riley, sit down, she snapped, not even bothering to glance in Evan's direction. You're causing a scene. I didn't move an inch. A scene? Evan has been spreading malicious lies about me for the past 5 minutes, and you're perfectly fine with that. She let out an exasperated sigh, pinching the bridge of her nose. You're an S-class Omega, Riley. You need to act like it. Stop provoking your classmates and focus on your studies. Your reputation is precarious enough after that wedding disaster. The words were like a slap to the face, but I held my ground. My reputation? That's funny. I was under the impression that the Alliance valued facts, not baseless gossip. I held up my phone. I have Evan's entire tirade recorded. Would you like me to send it directly to the OPA? Or should I include your name in the report for professional negligence and enabling harassment? Her eyes narrowed into slits, but before she could formulate a response, the door banged open again, this time with enough force to rattle the windows. Owen Hale stormed into the room, all 6 feet of him radiating a potent, protective alpha energy. His hazel eyes scanned the room, instantly finding me, and I swear the air crackled around him, thick with the scent of milk, candy, and indignation. What the hell is going on in here? He demanded, his voice sharp and authoritative. I could hear the shouting all the way down the hall. Evan physically shrank back in his seat, but the professor stepped forward, bristling at the intrusion. This is a private classroom, Mr. Hale. You can't just barge in euros. I'm here for my husband. Owen cut her off, and the word husband sent a fresh wave of shocked whispers through the room. He crossed the distance between us in 3 long, purposeful strides, his attention focused solely on me. Riley, are you okay? I blinked, momentarily thrown off balance by the raw, genuine concern in his eyes. I'm fine. Just dealing with Evan and his inferiority complex. Owen's head whipped around to face Evan, his expression darkening into a dangerous scowl. You're the one running your mouth. What's your problem, huh? You jealous because Riley is so far out of your league you'd need a telescope to even see him. Evan sputtered, his earlier bravado completely dissolving under Owen's furious gaze. I was just saying what everyone's thinking. You didn't even want him. The entire alliance heard you yelling about it at the wedding. Owen's Drade's jaw tightened, and for a split second, I thought he was going to launch himself across the desks and physically attack Evan. Instead, he let out a short, sharp, mocking laugh that made Evan flinch. Didn't want him. Dude, I'm married to him. Happily. Do you really think I'd be here if I wasn't all in? He slung a possessive arm around my shoulders, pulling me firmly against his side. The warmth of his body was grounding, a surprising anchor in the storm of classroom drama. Riley is my husband, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up directly with me. The room was dead silent. Every student was staring at us as if we were the main characters in a live-action soap opera. I knew I should pull away, that Owen was laying it on a little thick, but his protective warmth and that damn comforting scent were doing strange things to my resolve. I glanced up at him and caught the faint blush dusting his cheeks. He was playing the part of the protective alpha, but he was as nervous as a kitten. Mr. Kale, the professor said, her voice dripping with ice. This is completely unacceptable. Riley is already on thin ice due to Hisayo's behavior. Behavior? Owen interrupted, his voice incredulous. You're letting this slimeball, he jabbed a thumb in Evan's direction, publicly harass my husband, and Riley is the one with a behavior problem. What kind of backward institution is this? He turned back to me, lowering his voice so only I could hear. You got that recording? Send it to the OPA. I'll give them a statement to back you up. I nodded, my fingers already flying across the screen, forwarding the audio file. Done. The professor's face went pale, but it was Evan who looked like he was about to pass out. You can't do that, he squeaked. It was just a Euro's talk. Freedom of speech. Owen snorted. Freedom to be a world-class jackass, maybe. Good luck explaining that legal theory to the OPA. He tightened his grip on my shoulders, his tone softening. Come on, Riley. Let's get out of here. You don't need this crap. I allowed him to steer me towards the door, but not before I shot Evan a look that promised this was far from over. The professor was stammering something about disciplinary action, but I was no longer listening. Once we were in the relative quiet of the hallway, Owen finally released me, rubbing the back of his neck in a gesture that was both sheepish and endearing. Sorry if I overdid it in there, he mumbled. I just really didn't like the way that guy was talking about you. I studied him, taking in the way his eyes still flickered with worry, and I felt something in my chest soften and unfold. You didn't have to do that, I said. Buter euros, thank you. He offered me a small, lopsided grin. Anytime. Got to protect my husband, right? He paused, then added, plus, I really wanted to see the look on Evan's face when I called you that. Totally worth it. I laughed, a real, genuine laugh, and shook my head. You're ridiculous. Maybe, he said, taking a step closer, his scent wrapping around me like a warm blanket. But I'm your ridiculous. At least for the next month. I met his gaze, and for a moment, I forgot about Evan. the vicious rumors, and Caleb's stinging betrayal. All that mattered was that Owen was here, standing up for me, claiming me. He was, in his own chaotic way, all in, and that was more than I had ever expected to get. "We'll see about that," I said, but there was a smile in my voice that I couldn't hide. As we started walking towards the campus exit, I couldn't help but wonder if Owen's protective streak was genuine, or if he was still hiding something important behind that charming, milk candy smile. Either way, I was starting to think this one-month trial might be a lot more interesting than I had planned. I had barely made it through the academy's main gates, with Owen trailing behind me like an overeager golden retriever, when my eyes landed on a sight so bizarre it stopped me in my tracks. A man was kneeling on the sidewalk, clutching a bouquet of yellow roses so massive it bordered on his absurd. There must have been 999 of them, a veritable wall of yellow. Owen was still chattering excitedly about the look on Ivarna Eurostrade's face when I stopped so abruptly that he bumped right into me. His milk candy scent spiked, warm and distracting, but my full attention was fixed on the man with the roses, who was now looking directly at me. "Whoa, Riley," Owen said, following my gaze. His triumphant grin faltered. "What's this clown doing?" Before I could even begin to formulate an answer, the man on the sidewalk stood up, holding the enormous bouquet in front of him like a floral shield. "Riley," he said, his voice thick with a desperate, trembling emotion. "Marry me, please." He lifted his head fully, and my blood ran cold. It was Caleb Hale. His dark hair was a mess, his normally impeccable suit was rumpled, and his eyes were wide with a frantic cocktail of desperation and hope. The family resemblance to Owen was undeniable, but where Owen was all sharp angles and boyish, flustered charm, Caleb possessed a quieter, more intense energy, like the calm before a violent storm. Ona Eurostrade's arm, which had been resting lightly on my back, went rigid. "Bro," he said, stepping in front of me, positioning his body as a human shield. "You've got to be kidding me. Proposing to my husband, that's a new low, even for you." Caleb blinked, the romantic haze in his eyes evaporating, replaced by sheer confusion. "Husband." He looked from Owen to me, then back again, his brow furrowed as if he were trying to solve a complex puzzle with half the pieces missing. "What the hell are you talking about, Owen? I thought you were just doing me a favor, covering for me." I crossed my arms and leaned back against a nearby lamppost. This was about to get interesting. Caleb was clutching those roses as if they were his only lifeline, and Owen was practically vibrating with righteous indignation, his pheromones spiking, sweeter and sharper with agitation. A crowd of students was already starting to gather, whispering and pointing, and I was, for the moment, content to let the Hale brothers have their public meltdown. Covering, Owen let out a laugh, but it was a brittle, sharp-edged sound. "You abandoned him, Caleb. You ran off to chase some virtual girlfriend without so much as a goodbye text." I stepped up. "I did the right thing. Riley's mine now." He shot a quick, worried glance over his shoulder at me, as if to check that I was still there, that I hadn't disappeared. Caleb's jaw dropped. "Yours? You were screaming your head off about not wanting him. Dad told me you only agreed to save the family's reputation." He took a step towards me, his voice softening, pleading. "Riley, I am so sorry." I panicked. I thought I was protecting us, protecting our connection. "You know, the one we had in the game." I raised an eyebrow, a bitter taste filling my mouth. He was talking about our late-night sessions in Alliance Odyssey, the virtual world where we had flirted through our avatars and built what I thought was a genuine bond. A bond he had shattered when he ghosted me for someone else. Connection, I said, my tone light but laced with ice. You mean the one you threw in the garbage so you could chase a fantasy? Caleb flinched as if I'd struck him, his knuckles white as he gripped the roses. It wasn't like that. I just euros I needed time to figure things out. But I'm here now. I choose you, Riley. He tried to step closer, completely ignoring Owen's glare. Those nights we spent together in the Gamma Euros, they meant something. You felt it too, didn't you? Owen snorted, repositioning himself between us. Oh, give me a break. Yellow roses. Seriously, bro? Do you even know that yellow roses symbolize friendship and apology? If you're going to try and crash my marriage, at least pick a color that says I'm sorry for being a colossal jackass. Taleber Euros Trade's eyes narrowed. You're one to talk. Riley, he's lying to you. He's only doing this because Dad guilt-tripped him into it. He doesn't even a euros enough. I cut in, stepping forward. The crowd was growing, and I had no intention of being the main event in their afternoon entertainment. Caleb, you had your chance. You made your choice when you ran. Owen is here. He stayed. I glanced at Owen, who was trying his best to look smug, but mostly just looked like a nervous kid waiting for a gold star. And you, I added, pointing a finger at him. Stop acting like you've won some kind of prize. You're not exactly Mr. Transparency yourself. Ona Euro's Trade's triumphant smirk vanished, replaced by a sheepish look. He rubbed the back of his neck. I'm transparent. I'm liquor Euro's glass, crystal clear. Ask me anything. I didn't believe him for a second. Not with that milk candy scent that so clearly linked him to those shy, sweet moments in the game when Caleb would suddenly clam up. But before I could call him on his lie, Caleb made one last, desperate attempt, thrusting the wilting roses towards me. Riley, please. I know I screwed up, but what we had was real. You can't just throw it away. In a flash, Owen snatched the massive bouquet from his brother's hands and tossed it unceremoniously onto a nearby patch of grass. Back off, Caleb. You don't get to waltz back in here with a truckload of flowers and act like you didn't break his heart. His voice cracked on the final two words, and for a fleeting moment, I saw something raw and vulnerable in his eyes. It looked a lot like jealousy, but there was fear there too. Caleb lunged for the discarded roses, but Owen grabbed his arm, and in an instant, they were grappling like children on a playground. The crowd gasped, phones were raised, and I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. Fantastic. Now I was married to a toddler. Riley, Owen yelled, ducking a wild swing from Caleb. Tell him you're mine. I mean a euro's ours. I mean a euros, you know what I mean. I almost laughed, but I was too busy connecting the dots. Caleb was earnest, but he was also the man who had left me high and dry. Owen was a hot mess, but he had been here, fighting for me in his own chaotic, over-the-top way. And then it hit me. Both of you, stop it. I stepped between them, grabbing Owen's wrist and pulling him back. You're embarrassing yourselves. They froze, panting and glaring at each other. I turned to Caleb. You don't get to rewrite history. You chose someone else. Now you have to live with that. Then I turned to Owen, who was watching me with an expression of pure, unadulterated adoration. And we are talking later. Alone. Caleb's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him completely. Riley, our euros go, I said, my voice softer now, not unkind. Figure out what you really want, Caleb. but it's not me anymore." He hesitated for a long moment, then nodded, his eyes full of a sorrow that was no longer my responsibility. He bent down, picked up a few of the scattered roses, and walked away. The crowd, disappointed by the lack of a full-blown brawl, began to disperse. Owen turned to me, his grin tentative. "Sore euros, that was intense. You okay?" I rolled my eyes but let him fall into step beside me as we headed for his car. "You're lucky I didn't just leave both of you there to sort it out yourselves." He chuckled, though it sounded nervous. "I would have won, you know, for you." He paused, then his voice dropped, becoming quieter, more serious. "I'm sorry about the game thing. Euros, I might have borrowed Caleb's account a few times, just to talk to you." I stopped walking and turned to face him. His blush was back in full force, and his scent was so strong, so sweet and apologetic, that I could barely think straight. Borrowed it. So all those times when Caleb would get all shy and awkward and smell like candy euros, that was you. He nodded, his expression braced for a verbal assault. "I didn't mean to deceive you. I just euros, I really liked you. I still do. A lot." I studied his face, the raw sincerity shining in his eyes, and felt the last of my anger melt away. "You're an idiot," I said, but there was no heat in my words. "No more secrets, Owen. Understand?" "Understood," he said, a grin so bright it could have lit up the entire street spreading across his face. As we got into his car, his hand brushed against mine, and this time I didn't pull away. Caleb was gone, but Owen was here. And for the first time since this whole mess began, I was starting to think that might just be enough. I was sprawled across the impossibly soft leather couch in the Hale family living room, trying to lose myself in the meaningless scroll of my phone. But Euros Trade's intense glare was burning a hole in the side of my head. The atmosphere in the room was a toxic battlefield of unspoken resentments. Owen was sulking on the opposite couch, radiating misery, while Caleb paced back and forth like a caged tiger. Victor Hale sat in a large armchair, sipping a glass of expensive whiskey and smirking as if he were watching the season finale of a particularly trashy reality show. Grace, bless her heart, flitted between her sons, a nervous diplomat trying to broker peace in a war zone. It had been a week since the Yellow Rose debacle, and Caleb was now back in the family home, ostensibly to sort out the marriage annulment paperwork. I wasn't buying it for a second. His eyes, full of regret and a longing I refused to name, kept finding their way back to me. "Riley, dear, would you like some tea?" Grace asked, her smile kind but strained at the edges. She was the only person in the room who didn't feel like a tightly wound coil of tension. "I'm fine, thank you," I said, keeping my voice light. I was trying to project an air of cool detachment, but my thumb was hovering over a notification. An old chat with Caleb buried deep in my blocked contacts list. On a reckless impulse, I unblocked it, my eyes skimming over his last message. "I didn't mean to hurt you. Can we please talk?" It had been sent just hours before Euros Trade D shown up at the academy with that ridiculous bouquet. I deleted the entire chat history, a familiar tightness clenching my chest. He didn't get to erase the past with a few desperate words. Owen was watching me, his hazel eyes narrowed with suspicion, as if he could sense the turmoil in my mind. He had been unbearably clingy ever since Euros Trade's return, constantly finding excuses for physical contact euros, a hand on the small of my back as I passed, a casual brush of his fingers against mine. His milk candy scent seemed stronger today, laced with a nervous sweetness that I was trying very hard not to let get under my skin. "You okay?" he murmured, scooting closer on the couch until our thighs were touching. "You're being, like, super quiet," says the guy who hasn't stopped talking since breakfast. I shot back, offering a small smirk to hide the churning in my gut. "What's the matter with you? Scared I'm going to run off with your brother?" Ona Eurostrade's face flushed, but he leaned in closer, his voice a low whisper meant only for me. "Not scared. Just making sure you remember that I'm the superior Hale brother." He tried for a wink, but the flicker of genuine doubt in his eyes gave him away. He was worried. Deeply, genuinely worried. It was almost cute if I could ignore the suffocating undercurrent of jealousy. Caleb stopped his relentless pacing, his gaze locking onto us. "Owen, give it a rest. You're acting like a jealous child." His tone was sharp, but there was a layer of raw pain beneath it that I hated myself for noticing. He was the one who had left, yet that wounded look in his eyes, as if I were the one who had broken him, was infuriating. "Jealous?" Owen scoffed, slinging a deliberately possessive arm around my shoulders. "Why would I be jealous? I've got Riley." "What have you got?" "A pile of sad, rejected roses." He grinned, but it was a brittle, forced expression, and the sudden spike in his pheromones betrayed his anxiety. Victor chuckled into his whiskey glass. "The two of you are pathetic, fighting over Riley like he's the grand prize at the county fair. Has either of you bothered to ask him what he wants?" I raised an eyebrow, a flicker of amusement cutting through my irritation. "Thank you, Victor. I'm deeply flattered to be the family trophy." Grace shot her husband a withering look before turning to me. "Riley, please ignore them. They're just Euros passionate. Hale men don't do anything halfway." "Passionate is one word for it," I muttered, and Owen let out a short laugh, his arm tightening around me. Caleb's jaw clenched so hard I could practically hear his teeth grinding. "Riley," Caleb said, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "Can we talk alone?" He was standing too close, his sharp cedarwood scent clashing with Ona Eurostrade's overwhelming sweetness. I felt like I was trapped in the middle of a pheromonal tug-of-war. Before I could even think of a response, Owen was on his feet, his playful demeanor gone. "No way, bro. You had your chance. Riley's with me now. So back off." He was trying to sound tough and intimidating, but his eyes were fixed on me, pleading with me not to say yes. I stood up, planting myself between them. "Okay, that's enough. Caleb, we are done. You made your choice the moment you decided not to show up for our wedding. And Owen, stop acting like I'm a chew toy you're fighting over. I am not a prop in your pathetic sibling rivalry." I paused, my gaze zeroing in on Owen. "And you and I still need to have a serious talk about that video game." Owen flinched, the familiar blush returning with a vengeance. "Game? What game?" "I told you, I just borrowed Euros, save it," I said, but a reluctant smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. He was such a terrible liar, and it was, for some inexplicable reason, weirdly endearing. Caleb was watching us, his carefully composed expression crumbling, and I felt a sharp, unwelcome pang of guilt. But I was done entertaining his what-ifs and second chances. I turned to Grace. "I'm going to step outside for some fresh air. Do you think you can keep the circus under control in here?" She nodded, her eyes full of a warm, maternal understanding. "Though, I'll handle my boys." Outside, the cool evening air was a welcome relief. I leaned against the porch railing, taking a deep breath. Predictably, Owen followed me out, his footsteps hesitant on the stone steps. "Really euros, I'm sorry," he said, stopping a few feet away. "I didn't mean to make you feel like a prize. I just do euros, I really, really like you. Like a lot." I turned to study him. His dark hair was a mess from running his hands through it in frustration, and his hazel eyes were wide and vulnerable. That milk candy scent wrapped around me, and I was suddenly hit with a vivid memory of his shy avatar in the game, stammering and blushing whenever I teased him. "I know," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "But no more games, Owen. If you want this, if you want me, you have to be real with me. All of it." He nodded, stepping closer. "I am. I swear. I've liked you ever since those nights in the VR world, when I'd sneak onto Caleb's account just for a chance to talk to you. I was so terrified you'd figure me out." He let out a self-deprecating laugh. "I'm not good at this stuff, but I'm trying. I want you to choose me, Riley. Not because Caleb is gone, but because euros, because I'm enough." My heart did a stupid, traitorous little flip in my chest, and I hated how much his raw honesty affected me. "You're enough," I said, and his entire face lit up as if I had just handed him the moon and all the stars. "But I'm not making any promises yet. We still have 3 weeks left on our trial period, and I need to know that you're all in." "I'm all in," he said, his voice fierce and certain. "I'd marry you for real tomorrow if you'd let me." He paused, a look of panic crossing his face. "I mean, not to pressure you or anything. I'm cool, totally chill." I laughed, shaking my head. "You are about as chill as a Category 5 hurricane." He grinned, stepping closer until there was barely an inch of air between us. "A hurricane that's all yours, if you want it." I was about to respond when my phone buzzed. It was a message. A forwarded message from Owen's phone to Caleb's, which he had clearly sent to me by mistake. The text read, "Bro, Riley just slapped me and kicked me out of bed. Best night ever. You're seriously missing out." I stared at the message, then slowly lifted my eyes to meet Owen's. He had gone completely pale. He said, taking a hasty step back. "That was euros, that was a joke. I was just trying to mess with Caleb." I took a step forward, a slow, dangerous smirk spreading across my face. "A slap, huh? You want me to make that a reality?" He gulped, but a mischievous sparkle danced in his eyes. "Maybe. I mean, no. I mean, euros, you're really hot when you're scary." I laughed and gave him a light shove. "Get back inside, you idiot. And no more fake texts." He grinned, his confidence returning, and followed me back towards the door, his hand finding mine and lacing our fingers together. As we stepped back into the chaos of the Hale family living room, I caught Caleb's heartbroken gaze. But this time, I didn't feel guilty. I just tightened my grip on Owen's hand. "So, what do you all think of this mess? Iter euros trade s complicated. Iter euros trade s chaotic. And honestly, I have no idea how Iter euros trade s going to end. But I have to ask, who are you rooting for? Are you Team Owen, the chaotic but sincere younger brother? Or do you think Caleb, the one who ran away, deserves a second chance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you are Euros Trade enjoying this story and want to see what happens next, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single chapter. Thanks for watching, and I Euros Trade LL see you in the next video.